Mom was struggling, so I let her live in one of my houses for a low rent price. She then immediately started squatting in the house and claimed it was hers. I bought a small starter home during the housing market crash, completely by myself. I lived there for the better part of a decade before buying a larger home with my now husband. My parents really wanted to live there. It was small and easy to maintain. They have foreclosured in the past, so no way would they be capable of someone giving them a mortgage. Also, my dad is retired and my mom doesn't work. They wanted to rent from me. For a discounted rent, they paid off the mortgage, let's say $50K, with an over six-figure inheritance my parents got. A lease was written explaining that it was a prepayment of rent, and their rent would be only the taxes and insurance, and they would pay $350 per month. Basically only going up when taxes/insurance going up. We signed the lease, with all the other typical stuff in it, and had it notarized, and that's how it's been for a while now. So to be clear, I'm not making a fudging dime on this house. I recently told them the rent would go up by $3, yes, $3 BC of a slight increase in the insurance. My mother lost her shit, claiming I'm a money-hungry bitch. She was going to rip out everything she did, garden and other cosmetic changes, that I owe her, and I can't evict her. It's her house. She's not responsible for the insurance. Lee says otherwise. Insurance hasn't been raised in a decade. Look at fudging lumber prices. I'm trying to make her pay my personal home owner's insurance. A court will show me that and give her my house. We have a notarized lease. They are listed as tenants. I am the only one on the deed. My father demanded the bills, zero balls this man has, to see if I'm ripping them off. P.S. This house is a commutable distance from fudging Manhattan, so a studio appointment around here is like $1,500. This is a house with a large yard for their dog. I can easily get $2K for this house, even before they moved in. I sent them copies of the taxes and insurance showing only their address. P.S. I'm charging them discounted taxes. You get a discount for paying in full 90 days early. I told them to add and divide by 12 and told my mother to talk to a lawyer so they can slap them straight. I guess my father agreed with me. Now she's divorcing my father. Update. First, I want to thank everyone. I was mainly just venting. I was very upset after the exchange and have been dealing with some health issues, which my parents know about. So it's just a range of emotions right now. I keep getting a lot of the same questions. They have lived there for 4 years now. My mom has always been entitled and an alcoholic. Weekends and summers were spent with family. My aunt admitted when I was an adult, it was to keep us from being around the alcohol. I mainly did this for my father so he can get a chance to retire after having heart surgery when he worked a physically demanding job for 36 years. They asked to rent the house and pay it off as a prepayment of mortgage, so the only big bill monthly was their health insurance. I had a few others interested in renting my house. I did not ask them for this. They did not co-sign on the mortgage or help with the down payment. Their name is not on my house/deed. There have been rent increases in the past due to the taxes and insurance going up, and there was never an issue before. My husband's dad unfortunately passed away without getting to enjoy his retirement, a big reason why my husband told my dad he needs to retire and enjoy life a little, and his inheritance helped pay the down payment on our new house. My mom has a history of putting shit on me, and $3 is, I guess, my line in the sand. I started paying $200 per week after I graduated HS until I moved out at 20. I worked about 65 hours per week on top of school to do this. And yes, shockingly/yes, they foreclosed when I moved out. I stupidly put her on my phone plan and basically paid her phone for 2 years until the contract ended. She only paid me for 3 months out of those 2 years. She promised money for my wedding and never delivered. They didn't pay for college. They stopped paying for clothes/school expenses when I was 16. I had a job. I know this is all a red flag parade, but I trusted my dad more than her, I guess, and thought I was doing a good thing. I also want to keep this house. I love it and want to move back one day. It's just too small for us as a young family. Or allow my child to live there when they go to college and want to have fun without parents hanging around or racking up dorm costs. Also, she threatens divorce all the time. I doubt she'll actually go through with it. Relevant comments. OP on if her mother is divorcing her father for over $3. OP, who knows? She told me she was divorcing him, wanted all her money back and to never speak to her again. Of course she has threatened divorce before. Where she would live. She can't afford anywhere, and it ain't with me. Commenter 1. Kick them out then. Send them the eviction notice and let her try her shit in court. OP. I told my father I would, and my mom is dead set on a judge giving her the house on top of me being money hungry, and they'll all see it. My husband said to print out rental listings in the area and slam it on the table and tell them to decide, $353 or $2,000. Choice is yours. I also tried to explain the clauses I can use to get her out. She thinks I can never make her leave. I don't know what Kool-Aid she drank. OP on her mother's background, and if she is going no or low contact with her for her family's safety. OP, my mom won't be welcome with her attitude. I hope her sister is willing to take her in, but she gets even nastier when she drinks and no one can tolerate it anymore. Late 50s and no, she's always been very entitled, hence the previous foreclosure. BC, she wants what she deserves and not what she can afford. Made for a lot moving around and lack of utilities as a kid. Commenter 2, I'm confused. They paid off your mortgage to the tune of $50,000. How does that figure into things? If it was prepayment of rent, how is that calculated? OP. So to sum it up, they were to pay $1,350 per month. But they paid for 50 months at $1,000 and cut an additional $350. So if they moved before 50 months, they've been there 4 years. I would give them back $1,000 for every month they didn't get to live there. After 50 months that they still only pay $350 and not $1,350, but would get nothing back if they moved out. BC, the full $50,000 was utilized. That's how it's outlined. So basically there's very little of that $50,000 left they haven't used. Not sure if that explains it right. OP on who is really on the deed and if she added her parents' names to it. OP, no, they are just tenants. I own the house. The deed was recorded in my name years before they lived in it. Where I live, the deed is put into your name the day of closing. I would never sign it over. BC, I honestly love the house and plan to move in when I'm old. Empty nester. It's just too small for us right now with a growing family. Update 1. I finally have an update for you guys. So all aboard the Disappointment Express. To back up, after the divorce comment, they are not, in fact, getting a divorce. They went and celebrated their anniversary at a casino. I did not speak to them for a week. This past weekend, I tried to speak to my father and get an apology, hoping he would be in a better frame of mind. He wasn't. He doubled down with the BS, saying they didn't realize all the stuff I put in the lease, that my house was uninhabitable when they moved in. It wasn't. That they never would have put work into the house if they were just renters, etc. I asked them to specify and they said stuff about the garage screen door, the shed roof. My husband replaced 2/3 of it with my dad's help. Dad did the other 1/3, and by God, the hose. The hose leaked. That in no way affects the livability of the house, but in the words of my lawyer, and you agreed to live there in its original condition, buddy, so that's on you. Just like not reading the lease. My dad went on to just say all these things they were doing for me and not acknowledging a damn thing I was doing for them. At that point, I said some not nice things, including the alcohol-induced dementia everyone mentioned. They wanted to know if they were still going to be able to take my son to the fair. Not a fat chance in hell. I told him I didn't want either one of them around me or my family until they stopped being delusional and to decide to pay the increase or GTFO. I then cried when I got off the phone and my husband was upset with all of this. Cut to today. My mother called me asking what needed to be done to resolve this. BC, not being able to see my son was upsetting to them. I told them they needed to apologize for what they called me and that they were out of line. Well, you guys, they were scammed. My parents were fudging scammed. That's what this was all about. In my area, homeowners get daily calls, texts, and letters from people wanting to buy their house. It's not new in this market. I have even told them these letters are trash. Well, my parents were getting calls from people saying they were going to be renting the house. They acted like they were representing me. Someone also showed up to their house and was being very pushy about trying to see my mom in the house. This all happened before I mentioned the rent increase. So when my mom heard rent increase, she thought these phone calls and this person was real? Like, I was going to raise the rent to something they couldn't afford and force them out. This was before I told them it was $3, but even after they thought I was throwing them out. I asked them why they didn't ask me, and they said they were scared and had no place to go. I explained to them that's not even how it works. I can't rent a place with tenants. There's a whole legal process, and they should know this. They apologized for how they acted, everything they said, and were embarrassed. They were even more embarrassed that they believed this person and are officially old people that fell for a scammer. BC, they thought they were smarter than that. They hadn't given them money or information yet. I told them they were probably setting them up for it. Scammers will pretend to be renting a house and take people's first/last/ security, and when the new tenants show up, the house is already occupied and they're screwed out of the money, or pretend they need money to let them keep living in the house. I have no idea why they believe/fell for this person or why they never asked me in the first place, since I don't and wouldn't hire a representative for my one house. Their cameras were off when they came, but they're going to file a police report anyway. I told them to call the cops next time to file for harassment/trespassing if these people call or show up again. I got my apology from both parents. I explained everything in the lease and why it was legally written that way. I explained to them I can't throw them out on the street on a whim, and as long as they pay the minimum bills to live there, taxes/insurance, I was going to keep my end of the deal. So I guess that's my update. They're not getting evicted for now, but I might have to start monitoring them more closely to see if they fall for other dumb shit. PSA, a lot of us seem to have boomer parents, so I wanted to make you all aware of something. My parents have Medicaid, edit, which in the great ol' US of A means that if they have a large medical expense, they ain't paying for shit until all their personal assets are utilized. This means draining bank accounts, taking property, and even requesting back gifts from up to 5 years ago. So for example, your mom falls and breaks a hip and winds up in a rehab. Your mom gave you $20K for a new roof a few years ago. The government will demand that money before they pay for the rehab. They can take their savings and demand property in their name sold to pay for it. They legally cannot touch their car, but that's it. I know this from personal experience with a grandparent, and all of you should too to help protect your parents. Relevant comments. Commenter. And do they have proof of this scam? Frankly, it sounds like rather than admit they acted like childish brats and apologize, they came up with this incredibly far-fetched story to make you forgive them more easily. Which, by all means, if you want to go along with it, that's totally your call. They are your parents, and maybe it's easier to just let them have this one. OP needs to get a will done for the house to pass it down to her future children. OP, I have a husband and will have a will, so that wouldn't be an issue OP on if her parents believe everything including the scams. OP, it doesn't make any sense. I think my mom believed this person, went hysterical, went off on me when she heard increase, riled my father up, and then I think they realized it was a scam but were trying to get out of apologizing and admitting they're idiots. When I cut them off is when they admitted everything and were crying. Like why they couldn't ask me first? I've told them multiple times these letters and calls are trash. Honestly, my mother is also partially deaf and refuses to admit it. Here's shit she wants and fills in the rest of the convo. It's the most infuriating thing to deal with. Update 2. So, if you thought the last update was a doozy, hold on to your seats because things have gone completely off the rails. I honestly don't even know where to start with this. Is this even real life anymore? After the whole scam debacle, things quieted down for a bit. We had a solid few weeks of normalcy, no insane accusations, no bizarre behavior, and no random divorces that never happened. My parents even showed up for Thanksgiving, and aside from my mom subtly hinting that the turkey was a little dry, despite the fact that she contributed nothing, obviously, things seemed fine. But, of course, this was just the calm before the storm. So here's where things get wild. Last week, I got a call from my dad, completely frantic. Apparently, my mom had taken things next level. She decided to put the house up for sale. Yes, you read that correctly, my house. The house that she's renting from me. The one where her name is nowhere on the deed. She listed it with a real estate agent like she owned the place and was planning to cash in. I mean, I honestly thought he was joking at first because it's just so absurd. But nope, he wasn't. Now, here's the kicker: when I confronted her, she acted like I was the insane one. She had this whole story about how she thought it was finally time to downsize and wanted to move closer to the shore. Keep in mind, she has zero money to buy another house. I don't know where she thought she was going with this plan, but I guess logic left the building a long time ago. I had to call the real estate agent, which was the most awkward and embarrassing conversation of my life. The agent was just as confused as I was, and after verifying the deed and everything, they dropped the listing. But who even tries to sell a house they don't own? I've heard of people squatting in homes, but trying to make a profit off it? That's a whole new level of delusion. When I asked my dad what in the world possessed her to do this, he just sighed and said, "She's been watching those house flipping shows again." Really? Those shows make her think she can flip a house she doesn't own? I swear, I'm living in some alternate reality where everything is upside down and nothing makes sense. But wait, it gets worse. I got served a notice of a lawsuit. My mother is suing me for emotional distress. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. In the complaint, she claims that the stress of the rent increase, the $3 people, and the way I've treated her as a second-class citizen have caused her to suffer from severe emotional trauma. She's apparently seeking damages to the tune of $50,000. I had to sit down after reading that. Did I enter some sort of bizarro universe? What lawyer even agreed to take this case? I thought we had resolved everything after the scam situation, but apparently, she's holding onto this grudge like a rabid dog with a bone. Here's the thing though, this lawsuit is laughable, right? Any judge with half a brain would toss it out in 2 seconds flat. But the fact that she even went through with it, after everything, is just unreal. I haven't spoken to her since I got served. My dad's been calling, trying to smooth things over, but I'm not having it. At this point, I'm seriously considering full-blown no contact. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I don't know what she's going to pull next, but I'm not sticking around to find out. And then, in the middle of all this chaos, I found out I'm pregnant. My husband and I are thrilled, but the timing could not be worse. I haven't told my parents yet because, let's be real, they'll probably make it all about them. I'm waiting until things settle down if they ever do. Or maybe I'll just send them a postcard from the hospital after the baby's born and keep things short and sweet. Congrats, your grandparents. Please don't sue the baby. I wish I had some grand resolution to share, but this is where things are at right now. My lawyer is confident we'll get the lawsuit dismissed, but the fact that it even exists is beyond infuriating. My husband's been amazing, but even he's starting to lose patience with the sheer madness of it all. Update 3. Alright folks, buckle up because this is the final chapter in this saga, and let me tell you it's a wild one. I wasn't sure I'd ever be writing this, but after everything that's happened, I figured you all deserve to know how it ended. So, after the whole, my mom is suing me fiasco, I went no contact. It wasn't even a question. I was pregnant, stressed out, and had zero patience left for her insanity. My lawyer was handling the lawsuit, which, as expected, was laughable and had no legs to stand on. We were just waiting for a court date to get it tossed out, and I was focusing on my pregnancy and keeping my sanity intact. Now, this is where things take a turn. About 2 weeks after I cut off communication, I get a call not from my mom or dad but from my aunt, my mom's younger sister. We hadn't been close in years, mostly because my mom burned a lot of bridges, and I guess I got swept up in that mess by association. But this call, oh boy, she was calling to let me know that my parents had been arrested. Yep, arrested. Apparently, they had gotten themselves involved in some shady real estate scheme. Remember how my mom tried to sell my house? Well, turns out that wasn't a one-off crazy idea. She had linked up with some con artist, some guy who claimed he could help them flip properties. They were trying to run a scam, selling properties they didn't even own. I have no idea how my parents thought they could pull this off, but knowing my mom, she probably convinced herself it was all going to work out just fine because she deserved it. Entitlement. Meet karma. So, this guy had them convinced they could make thousands, maybe even millions, because why not dream big when you're a delusional maniac? And they were actually going to try and sell multiple properties, none of which they had any right to. One of them, as you probably guessed, was my house. The others? Random homes in the neighborhood that they had zero connection to. They were apparently signing fake documents, and it was this whole elaborate thing. Like, truly next-level fraud. How my parents even got involved in this level of criminal activity is beyond me, but here we are. Long story short, they got caught. The authorities caught wind of the scheme probably because my mom is about as subtle as a bull in a china shop, and my parents, along with this con artist, were arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and God knows what else. They're facing serious jail time. I'm talking years, people. My dad, of course, is trying to play the victim, saying he was just going along with my mom's plan and didn't really understand what was happening. Sure, Dad. Sure. I'm not buying it for a second. He may not have been the mastermind, that honor goes to my mom, who, let's face it, has been a walking disaster for as long as I can remember, but he was definitely complicit. So now, they're both sitting in jail, awaiting trial. I've spoken to my lawyer about it, and luckily, none of this mess affects my house or me directly. The courts have made it clear that my property was never truly at risk because my name is the only one on the deed, and all of their attempts to sell it were fraudulent from the get-go. It was a scare, but legally, I'm in the clear. And here's the real kicker: remember that lawsuit my mom filed against me for emotional distress? It got dropped because she's, incarcerated. The irony is almost too perfect. She was going to try to drag me through the mud in court, but now she's the one stuck in the legal system, and I'm walking away with nothing but a slightly smug smile on my face. Now, let's talk about my dad for a second. When all this went down, he tried to reach out. He wanted to apologize and explain everything, but I wasn't having it. I told him straight up that I was done. Done with the lies, done with the manipulation, done with them. I have a family of my own to protect now, and I'm not letting their chaos touch my life anymore. It felt cold, but honestly, it was long overdue. As for my mom, she hasn't reached out at all, which is honestly for the best. From what I hear, she's still blaming everyone but herself. Classic narcissist behavior. According to my aunt, my mom is convinced that she was set up and that none of this is her fault. I'm sure she'll go to her grave believing that. But me? I'm done trying to fix her, save her, or even understand her. I'm done. So what now? Well, I'm officially no contact with both of them, and it's been a weight off my shoulders. My husband and I are focusing on our baby, who is due in just a few months. The house that started this whole mess? We're making plans to renovate it when the time is right, maybe even turn it into a vacation home or rent it out to responsible tenants. Either way, I'll be keeping it in the family, and my parents will never set foot in it again. In the end, I've learned a lot from this ordeal, mainly that blood doesn't entitle anyone to your sanity, your peace, or your well-being. My mom's sense of entitlement and delusion brought her exactly where she deserved to be, and my dad's blind loyalty to her nonsense got him right there with her. It's sad, sure, but I'm not sad for them anymore. I'm just relieved it's finally over. I guess that's the end of this wild ride. It's not the closure I ever imagined, but in a way, it's satisfying. My parents are dealing with the consequences of their own actions, and for once, I'm free of their mess.